The Curse of the Old Camera. Chapter 1. Return to the Childhood Home. John Carter stood at the threshold of the old house where he had spent his childhood. Time had not been kind to it. The paint was peeling, the windows were covered in dust, and the garden was overgrown with weeds. The air was thick with the smell of damp and decay. But despite this, the house still held countless memories. Lisa, John's girlfriend, stood beside him, holding his hand. She understood how important it was for him to return here, despite the dark memories associated with this place. "Are you ready?" Lisa asked, trying to catch his gaze. "Yes, I'm ready," John replied, sighing and pushing the door open. Creaked loudly, allowing them inside. Inside, everything looked as if time had stood still. The furniture was covered in dust, photos adorned the walls, and an old carpet lay on the floor. Everything was as it had been, just older and more somber. "It's creepy here," Lisa admitted, glancing around. "But I'm glad you brought me." John smiled at her. "I wanted you to see this place. So much happened here." They climbed up to the attic, where John had spent a lot of time as a child. Opening an old chest, he discovered an old camera, the very one his father had used. John picked it up, feeling a strange excitement. On the camera's body, he noticed an engraving, "Detective Harris." The name intrigued him. John was puzzled, knowing his father had never mentioned any detective. "What's wrong?" Lisa asked, seeing his confusion. "Look," John replied, showing her the engraving. "The camera has Detective Harris's name on it. I don't remember my father mentioning him." Lisa looked at the engraving and frowned. "Maybe it's somehow connected to your family's past? We should find out more." "Yes, maybe," John said, still holding the camera. "But let's take some pictures first." Chapter 2. The Nude Photoshoot. Lisa stood in front of the mirror in the bedroom where they decided to do the photoshoot. Sunlight filtered through the dusty curtains, creating a soft glow. She wore a light silk robe and looked at John. "Are you sure this camera still works?" she asked with a smile. "Of course," John replied, setting up the camera on a tripod. "Let's test it now." Lisa stood in front of the camera, and John began photographing her. Every shot came out perfect, as if the camera knew how to adjust itself. Lisa felt comfortable and free, posing for John. Soon, she took off the robe, remaining in her underwear. Her skin glowed in the soft light, and John was captivated by her beauty. Lisa moved gracefully, every motion fluid and natural. John continued to take pictures, admiring her attractiveness and elegance. The camera seemed to be a magical device that captured all her energy and beauty. Lisa laughed and posed, her long hair cascading over her shoulders. She felt confident and free, and it showed in every shot. John couldn't take his eyes off her. Each photo was better than the last. "You look stunning," John said, finishing the shoot. "You're a true goddess." Lisa approached him, hugged him, and kissed him. "I'm happy we did this," she said. "These photos will be a wonderful memory." They looked at the photos together, marveling at the quality and details. John couldn't believe how well the camera captured every detail of her body, every line and curve. Lisa was amazed at how beautiful she looked in the photos. When they finished looking at the photos, Lisa gently placed her hand on John's chest and looked into his eyes. There was tenderness and passion in her gaze. She pulled him closer, and their lips met in a long, passionate kiss. They lay down on the bed, and John embraced Lisa, feeling the warmth of her body. Every breath, every movement seemed magical to him. Their touches were gentle and tremulous. They enjoyed every moment, forgetting about everything else. Lisa gently ran her hand down John's back, and he responded by stroking her hair. Their bodies intertwined in a harmonious dance, filled with love and passion. They were together, fully immersed in this intimate moment that seemed eternal. Afterwards, they lay side by side, listening to the beating of each other's hearts and breathing. Lisa snuggled up to John, feeling safe and calm in his arms. She closed her eyes, savoring the moment. "I love you," Lisa whispered, and John responded in kind, kissing her gently on the forehead. They fell asleep, holding hands, unaware that challenges awaited them that would change their lives forever. Chapter 3. First Symptoms. The next day, Lisa began to feel unwell. She was plagued by headaches, weakness, and strange rashes on her skin that looked like burns. She decided to stay in bed, hoping it was just a temporary ailment. "John, I think I'm sick," she said as he brought her a cup of hot tea. "Maybe I caught a cold." John frowned. "You look bad. Maybe you should see a doctor." "Not now," Lisa replied, closing her eyes. "I just want to rest." John felt uneasy. The symptoms seemed familiar, but he couldn't remember why. Suddenly, memories of his childhood resurfaced. How his parents and sister had suffered from similar symptoms before they died. Over the next few days, Lisa's condition worsened. Red spots on her skin began to spread and turn into painful sores. She lost her appetite and constantly felt weak. John was terrified by how quickly her health was deteriorating. John could no longer sit idly by. He began searching for information about the camera and the name Detective Harris engraved on it. He went through old family photo albums and diaries, hoping to find some clue. One evening, while Lisa was asleep, John sat in the library, poring over old documents. In one of his father's diaries, he found a note. "Today I saw Detective Harris again. He is persistently asking about the camera. I hope I made the right choice in hiding it." These words made John ponder. Why had his father hidden the camera? And what was Detective Harris's involvement? Lisa's face became increasingly disfigured by sores and spots. John looked at her with pain and fear, not knowing how to help his beloved. He knew that the answers might be painful, but it was the only way to save Lisa. The next morning, John decided to find Detective Harris. He knew the detective could shed light on the mystery of the camera and explain how his father had come to possess it. John began searching for information about Detective Harris and his family online. He found several old news articles and archived documents mentioning strange deaths in the Carter family. All the deceased family members had similar symptoms: skin problems, sores, and unexplained illnesses. Continuing his search, John came across an article mentioning Detective Harris. It detailed his investigations and achievements, and mentioned that he lived in the same city where John was now. Fortunately, the article included the detective's current address. John felt he had finally found a lead. He wrote down Harris's address and decided to go there immediately. He knew time was running out, and every minute could be crucial. Lisa refused to see a doctor, fearing that they wouldn't be able to help her. She was ashamed of her reflection in the mirror, unable to look at her skin covered in sores and spots. Every time she approached the mirror, she was overcome with horror and shame. Chapter 4. Searching for Answers. John stood at the door of Detective Harris's house. His heart was pounding, his hands slightly trembling. He knew this was his last chance to find answers and save Lisa. Summoning his courage, he knocked. The door opened, and an elderly man with a keen gaze stood before him. This was Detective Harris. "How can I help you?" Harris asked, scrutinizing John. "My name is John Carter," John began, swallowing nervously. "I found your camera. It belonged to my father, and I need to know what's wrong with it." Harris frowned at the mention of the name Carter. He invited John inside and gestured towards a chair in the living room. John sat down, feeling tense. "I haven't heard that name in a long time," Harris said, sitting opposite. "Your father was involved in an investigation I conducted many years ago." John listened, holding his breath, as Harris recounted his investigation. He explained that the camera had been used to document crime scenes. John's father had stolen it to hide evidence of his crimes. "Your father was involved in a serious crime," Harris continued. "He worked in the police force and one day accidentally killed a man. Instead of confessing, he decided to cover his tracks. The camera was used to document evidence that could prove his guilt, so he stole it." John was stunned. He had never imagined his father could be involved in something like this. But now everything made sense. The strange illnesses, the deaths of his parents and sister, and now Lisa's illness. "But why does the camera cause illness?" John asked, not understanding the connection. It seems the camera somehow captures the life energy of the people it photographs, Harris explained. These people start to get sick, and their energy is transferred to the photos. This explains why your family suffered. Is there a way to break the curse? John asked, desperately hoping for an answer. Possibly, if the camera is returned to the police and its influence is stopped, Harris replied. But it's dangerous. The camera can be unpredictable. John knew he had to try. He thanked Harris for his help and promised to return the camera to the authorities. He immediately headed to the police station with the camera in hand. His thoughts were a jumble, but he was sure this was the right course of action. At the station, he returned the camera and explained that it was necessary to stop the strange illness. After that, John realized he needed to make peace with the past and seek forgiveness from those who had suffered because of his father's actions. He found the address of the widow of the man his father had killed, Mrs. Brown, and set off to see her. When John found the widow, he felt a heavy weight on his chest. He needed to tell her the truth and ask for forgiveness. Mrs. Brown, John began, standing at her doorstep. My name is John Carter. I came to ask your forgiveness for what my father did. Mrs. Brown looked at him with surprise and apprehension. What do you mean? John told her the whole story, explaining how his father had accidentally killed her husband and tried to cover it up by stealing the camera. He also explained how the camera had caused his family's suffering. Tears welled up in Mrs. Brown's eyes, but she listened attentively. I didn't know what really happened, she said when John finished. It's very hard to hear, but I appreciate your honesty. I returned the camera to the police, John promised. I'll do everything I can to make amends for my father's mistakes. Mrs. Brown nodded, and John felt the weight on his shoulders lighten a little. He knew he had taken an important step towards reconciliation and redemption. Chapter 5. Saving Lisa. John returned home, his heart beating faster than ever. He knew he had done everything he could to correct the mistakes of the past, and now it was a matter of hoping for the best. When he entered the house, Lisa was still lying in bed, but her condition seemed to be improving. I did everything I could, John said, sitting beside her and taking her hand. Now we just have to wait and hope. Lisa gave a faint smile. Her skin was still marked with spots, but the sores were beginning to heal, and her breathing was steadier. She looked at John with gratitude and love. Over the next few days, Lisa's condition continued to improve. She began to get out of bed and gradually returned to her normal life. John was by her side every step of the way, supporting and encouraging her. One morning, Lisa approached the mirror and, looking at her reflection, saw that her skin had almost cleared. The sores had disappeared, leaving only small traces that would heal over time. She turned to John, who was standing behind her, and hugged him. We did it, she said with a smile. We did it together. John felt tears of joy fill his eyes. Yes, Lisa, we did. They knew that a new life awaited them, free from the horrors of the past. But the most important thing was that they had faced the challenge together, and it had only strengthened their love and bond. Later, John and Lisa decided to leave the house where all their troubles had begun to Mrs. Brown, the widow of the man his father had killed. They felt it was the right thing to do to reconcile with the past and give her a chance for a new beginning. Before leaving, John printed the photos from their nude photoshoot. Together with Lisa, they went out to the garden, and John lit a small fire. Lisa slowly and carefully threw the photos into the flames, watching as the fire consumed the images, leaving only ashes. Now we can leave this behind, John said, embracing Lisa. They knew that a new life awaited them, free from the horrors of the past. They moved to a new city to start afresh. Their new home was bright and cozy, filled with the sense of hope and new beginnings. They often remembered those dark days, but now it was just a reminder that together they could overcome any challenges. Their life continued, and they were happy to have left the dark past behind. The end. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe to our channel and don't forget to hit the like button. Thank you for your attention.